This one's not nearly as long as the first story. I mean, um, you don't make weapons of mass destruction more than once in your class if you learn anything at all from your mistakes. This one had nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, but it was a weapon, so to speak, and it wasn't something I did. Um, when I first started teaching, this was my very first year. I taught um, three English classes. I had an English 12 level 1, an English 12 level 2, and then an English 12 level 3. And this was back in the days, it was the late 90s when you could still level. They were leveled by ability. Nowadays, other than maybe a technical English class or an advanced placement class, you're not allowed legally to level the class, um, which I understand. It makes perfect sense. But anyway, in this particular class, this was my English 12, senior English, level 3. And I learned not long after I taught this class that they had recently changed the name of the class to level 3. And it had originally been senior English or English 12 level N, which stood for non teachable. They were actually called like non teachable, which made me always wonder how did they get to 12th grade um, if they were non teachable? And I guess they didn't want the students to be labeled, so they called them level 3. But everybody knew that they were level 3. So anyway, I called them the "Why come we got to read this class?" Not to their face. I mean, it was just in my own mind because somebody actually asked me that. Why come we got to read this? We were reading Macbeth, and I got into a bit of an argument with this kid. Why come we got to read this? And my thought was, well, because you live in the United States in the late 20th century, and you think "why come" is the way to say that. I didn't say that. But this same kid, actually, it was a different kid, but it was the same class, said to me, because they really weren't enjoying Macbeth. I mean, this was a group that was not into 16th century British literature. But this kid said to me, I have a truck, I have a trailer that's paid for, and I can sign my welfare check. So I don't need this stuff. And at the time, I didn't really feel like I had a good answer for him because I was like, well, if that's all it's good, if that's all you want. I feel like now I understand the world a little better and life and what's matters and what's important. And I feel like I could give him a better answer than I did, which was basically sit down and shut up. Um, but I think it might be lost on him. Um, he's long gone anyway. I mean, I don't know where he is. But anyway, in this particular class, this was the late 90s. This was back when everything was on paper. And we took a test the day before. And if you're my age or close to my age, you know that when you take a test and then you grade it the next day, you go over it, and if anybody wasn't there for the test, you just have them sit out in the hallway for a few minutes while you go over it, and then you call them back in. And that's what happened with this particular young man. And we were getting ready to go over the test, and I said, okay, just go ahead and wait outside. And I had this class that was kind of way back. Um, it's now known as the Cave. Lori Zyla teaches there, at least a part of it. But it's kind of out of the way. So you got to go down a hall, down some steps, up some steps, and then another little hallway with some steps there. You never went there by accident. You had to be going there to get there. But anyway, um, I opened the door for the kid, and he walked out and he sat on the steps right outside the door, which is where he was. That was fine. So we went over the test. Maybe it took maybe 5, 10 minutes, and then I went out to get the kid. But I put one kid out, but somehow I had two when I went out there the second time. And the second kid I'd never seen before in my life. It was a girl, and it was obvious that they were sitting really close together and kind of giggling. It was obvious they were a couple. And I said, I don't know who you are, but you're not supposed to be here, so you need to go. And we're done. You need to come back in the room. And he said, I'll be in a minute. I said, no, you'll be in now. We've got stuff to do. You need to get in the room. And you, to the young lady, I don't know where you're supposed to be, but get there. And so this is where I made my rookie mistake. Instead of waiting for the kid to come in past me and go in front of me, I waited for him to get up and start toward the door. Um, and then I walked in and I let him be behind me, which was just a ridiculously stupid thing to do. So I'm walking in the room and I'm walking toward the class, and the class is all sitting there, and they're half awake. It's English class. It's not a very cool room. I mean, literally cool. It's hot in there. They're half asleep. But as I'm walking toward the class, they're kind of half looking at me, and then suddenly everybody in the room does this. And I turn around, and there's this kid who has walked in the room behind me. And just as he gets in the room, he picks up a desk, a full size wooden desk, and he has it over his head. And he's like, like you see in the movies, the caveman chucking the boulder. That's what he does. He has this desk literally over his head, and he chucks it at me, and it flies through the air. But it's a desk, it's monstrous, it's huge. So I just step back, and it lands on the floor where I was standing. He misses me, and the kids are all yelling and laughing, and it's like he threw a desk at him. And so I say, "All right, get down to the office, just get out." And I was one of the few teachers in the building that had a phone at the time. So I run over. I remember from a story that I'll tell later about making sure that the kid gets where he's supposed to go. Um, but anyway, I run over and I call the office and I say, "I sent this kid down to the office. He just threw a desk at me." And the secretary was like, "Excuse me?" I said, "He threw a desk at me." She said, "An actual desk, a whole desk?" And I said, "Yeah, he threw a desk at me." I said, "Did it hit you?" She said, "No, he missed, but he tried. He tried really hard." And so I filled out paperwork later in the day, you know, what happened in this incident, kid threw a desk at me, and turned it in. I never got called in to explain what happened. But you know what's funny? It was the late 90s. It was a different world then. I never saw that kid again. He got expelled for assaulting a teacher, for at least attempting to assault a teacher. And the reason I say that with such incredulity is that I saw many worse things happen to me and to other teachers in the later years that I taught. Uh, Much worse. Um, where the student not only didn't get expelled, but they were back before the period was over. Back then, if a kid did something terrible to a teacher, they were just gone. I mean, they might actually go to jail. And there are good and bad things about that. But that's my first year teaching. I get a desk fired at me. Um, it was a real kind of baptism by fire. I made it through that year somehow. Godspeed.